Hi everybody, I'm Rob. I started as a photographer in the 90s, so I've been around the block a little bit, and I thought it was about time that I shared some of this information with you, just in a bid to help people that are looking at getting into photography, whether that's digital or film. I shoot both. The three cameras that we're going to talk about today are film, but the same things that I'm going to mention apply both ways. There are going to be some differences in how you shoot the two, but we'll talk about them in a future segment. Okay, so you want to get into photography. How do you go about starting? Well, I think the first thing is to choose what kind of camera you want to use. And this is a bit of a generalization, but there are kind of three main types. So we're going to look at those today. Now, the first one is going to be your point and shoot, something like this, something without really any manual control. It's literally hold it to your eye, frame up your, whatever it is you're shooting, your subject, and press the button. And that's about it. So these are good for kind of like ease of use, portability, and this one is a bit different in that it's got a lens that extends. It's not a zoom, it's just a dual lens, but most are going to be kind of like that much of a camera. Something like the Olympus Trips, things like that, are good options. They're small, compact, you can fit them in a pocket, and they're brilliant. They have no controls really to worry about. Some will have a flash and some might have something called exposure compensation, but again, that's not across the board. If you just want something with a button, then there are plenty of options for those around, and they're ideal for just kind of carrying around town, keeping in your bag or your pocket all the time. Now, the second option is going to be the SLR, or a single lens reflex, and this has a few benefits. These suit professionals, hobbyists, enthusiasts, anyone. Some of them can be shot in automatic modes, and some are going to have various modes to aid the shooting experience without you having to think too much about it. Some have autofocus, some don't. But what the SLR stands for, the single lens reflex, is that when you look through the viewfinder, you're seeing exactly what the lens is seeing. There's a system of prisms and mirrors that kind of bounce the view around through the lens into your eye. Now, that mirror that sits in the camera, when it takes the picture, whether you've got a sensor or a film in the back, has to flip up. So at the moment you take the picture, you're not seeing what's in the frame. And most of the time that's not going to be a problem, but we'll get to that in a minute. But that flipping up of the mirror, something we call mirror slap, in certain cameras can be loud, and it can also introduce just a little bit of shake. So in some situations that's not ideal, but for the most part, this is my favorite. This is the Nikon F2. For the most part, these are fantastic cameras and they are capable of doing all sorts. The main difference, or one of the main differences between this and the point and shoot, is that these have interchangeable lenses. So you can have a macro lens, you could have a telephoto lens, you could have a wide angle lens, all sorts of different uses, tilt shift lenses. Again, we'll talk about all those kind of variables later on. But for now, just remember that they tend to be slightly bigger because they've got the prism on top. They tend to be a little bit heavier, but they will almost all have full manual control, and that's something which is really beneficial to a photographer. This one is kind of different to most. There aren't many modular SLRs, but the Nikon F2 is one of them. So you can actually take off the prism on this and you can put a waist level finder, so you're looking down at your view. Now you're still seeing through the lens, but you're not having to hold it up to your eye. And for some people, they prefer working that way. I like that in medium format. I do like it in this sometimes, but especially if you're doing kind of street photography and you don't want to be seen kind of in the street looking at people with a big chunk of camera up to your eye. It's a little bit more inobtrusive if you're just kind of looking down and you don't attract people's attention, because I think as soon as a lens is pointed their way in front of someone's face, then people can get a bit nervous or just more aware. Even if they don't mind you taking their picture, they're just more aware of it, and sometimes that breaks the kind of candid aspect of your photos. So the third main kind of camera is a rangefinder. Lots of people have heard of the name Leica, which is probably the most famous rangefinder camera brand. They do make other kinds as well, but that's what they're kind of really renowned for. Now, the difference between this and an SLR is, you've probably guessed already just from looking at it, there's no prism on top. So rangefinders don't let you see through the lens. There's none of that kind of zigzag through the lens to your eye. How these work is you have this second little window here, and you focus by looking through the viewfinder, and there will be usually a central patch in the middle. And as you look through, there'll be a ghost image which is taken from this secondary lens. And as you focus, you line up the ghost image over the main view. And when they're lined up, you know you're in focus. Other than that, they work in a very, very similar way to an SLR. You've got aperture controls, shutter speed controls. They're generally full manual. We'll talk about the differences between digital and film in a bit. When we talk about the exposure triangle, I'll explain all of that. It's not as complex as you might think. But that's it. You wind the film on, or the SD card in your camera will just go to the next shot as you take them. But otherwise, they're pretty much the same. So these are really good for keeping in a bag or pocket if you've got a short lens and a big enough pocket. This particular one, the Canon P, is my favorite. I have a Leica as well. But there's something about this I love. This is a late 50s model, and it's just a beautiful camera to use. It's got some heft, so I wouldn't, in this jacket, I wouldn't keep it in a pocket. But in a shoulder bag, perfect. Interchangeable lenses. Now this one uses a screw-on lens, where many will use a bayonet, like the SLR I've got there. But this means you've got kind of the options to use. This is actually a Leica thread mount on this camera, so I can use Leica lenses on here if I wanted to. So that's rangefinders. Like I say, good for street photography, anywhere you want something just a little bit smaller and a little bit lighter. Canon do other ones as well, Canonets, which are quite nice cameras. I prefer the P. We'll talk maybe about brands and what they're more known for in another video. I don't think we need to worry about that so far. But leave a comment or a question below if you want a recommendation on a good camera to get. I would say, just talking about price, because you're going to have to worry about budget. A camera like this in good condition, I mean, this is immaculate. You'd never know it's, what, 60 years old or however old it is now. You can pick up with a lens. This is a f1.8 lens. Don't worry about the F numbers. We'll get to those. For about 350 pounds, so about $400. The Canon F2, it's not a dissimilar price actually. These are built like a tank. There are stories of these stopping bullets when kind of war correspondents have been out shooting with them. And you'll see, if you looked at videos of Nikon F2s, you'll see people talking about how you can beat off a mugger with them. Rock solid, again, probably about £300 to £400. And then the point and shoots, you can start at £20 or £30 for one of these. You can pick them up really, really cheap. Something like this with a couple of extra features. I'll just show you what I mean. So if you see here, this is called the Sure Shot Telly, and it means that I have two lengths of lens. So I think it's a 40 and a 70. I can't remember exactly, but if I press a button on the back, you can see that that changes. You can pick these up for, maybe 50 or 60 pounds. But yes, obviously that's starting points. You can go up to the thousands and thousands, especially with Leicas, very expensive, and certain digital cameras are very expensive. Choosing between film and digital is probably a topic for another video, but as a sweeping generalization, digital is more convenient. You can get your photos onto your computer more easily. Once you ignore the initial cost of the camera itself, digital is almost free. As long as you've got memory cards, you can keep on shooting. There are benefits to being able to hold down the trigger and just fire off a load of shots loads of shots in rapid succession, so that if you're trying to get someone walking across your frame to, you know, fall into a pool of light or something, if you hold the shutter button down and you take 10 shots, you're more likely to get that. With film, you need to be a bit more intentional. And this is where I think for street photography, something like a rangefinder makes more sense. Because there's no mirror to flap up, you're always looking through an open viewfinder. So this is compensated, so it's getting a very close approximation to what the lens is going to see. But that means you can hold it to your eye and you can see as your subject moves across the frame the exact moment to take the shot. So that's another benefit of a rangefinder. Now, some people are going to have a left dominant eye, some people are going to have a right dominant eye. I'm actually left dominant eye, so this doesn't work quite as well for me, although I have a 1-to-1 magnification in my viewfinder. So as I hold it up, I can see, you know, up to a certain point, and then I can see what's going in, whereas other people will like to keep one eye open and look through and take the shot, because then they've got all their peripheral vision as well. Doesn't work for me, but it's never been a problem. So that's cameras. Now we will talk in a future video, I think it won't be in this course, we'll talk about medium format, maybe some large format. And like I say, we'll talk more detailed about digital versus analog. The only other thing I will say about shooting on film is you don't have the benefits and the convenience and things, but the process of not just shooting the photos themselves, making the photograph is a joy on film. It slows you down to an extent. Some people will shoot film on something that will take, you know, 10 shots a second if you got the right camera. You know, up until 25 years ago, all photography was done on film. So don't let that put you off. But if you want a slower pace and you want to think about things a bit more and you want every shot you take to try and count, then film is the way to go. Obviously you can do that with digital as well, but I like restrictions. I think restrictions boost creativity. I think if you're working within a defined set of parameters, then it can only do you good, because it makes you think about how you're going to work. If you just want to go out and take pictures at parties or family events or sports events, or you're just out at the beach for the day, things like that, then a point and shoot digital camera, or a film camera for that matter actually, is ideal. If you're trying to make art, or you're trying to do reportage and you're trying to capture specific moments or specific scenes in a certain way, then I think an SLR or a rangefinder, depending on your use case, is probably best. And try and slow down, try and think about it, try and think about the lighting. And we'll talk about lighting again. In the next part of the video, we're going to talk about exposure, so you can understand how that works and how apertures and f-stops and shutter speeds, what they actually mean and how they work together to help you get the result that you want. So that's it for cameras. Have a think about it. Compare different models, do loads of research, look at YouTube videos, see what kind of camera just makes you excited to go and shoot. I think it's probably equally as important that your choice of camera makes you want to pick it up than the quality of the camera or what functionality it has. It doesn't matter if you could have all the bells and whistles in the world, but if the camera doesn't speak to you and make you want to go out and shoot, then you're not going to, and then it's just a heavy paperweight, an expensive heavyweight paperweight. Now, I do lots of different types of photography, and I tend to have different tools for different jobs, because I've been doing it professionally for 25, 30 years. Don't feel the need. You'll hear a lot of photographers talking about GAS, gear acquisition syndrome, which is where you want to go out and buy the next big thing, or you just want to try something new. There's nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong at all, but don't feel obligated to join in with that. Find a camera you like the look of, try it out if you can, try it out in a shop, or sell it on. If you buy one on eBay or something and you just don't gel with it, sell it on, try something different. But don't fall into the trap of feeling you need the next big thing or the latest thing. There's no need. Cameras have been taking amazing pictures for decades and decades, so whatever you want is going to work for you. given it gives you the access to controls that you need for the type of photography you want to do. I personally would suggest for most photographers looking to get started that an SLR is the way to go. They tend to be the most versatile. You can't go wrong with them. They're easy to learn the actual functions and how to use them. There are probably millions upon millions of them out there. You can pick them up cheap. You could get something like a Pentax K1000 or a Canon AE1 for £100, £150 with a lens. Usually it's going to be like a 50mm lens, and that will do you for, or it could do you for the rest of your life. It could keep you happily shooting away for years and years and years. Maybe give it a service once in a while. It won't cost that much money to do. Or you could go for something like this. That's fine. You know, if you want to spend a bit more and get something a bit more special, then do. Just don't fall into that trap. That's all I would say. Having a camera that speaks to you and makes you want to pick it up and go out is the most important thing. Doesn't matter what brand it is. It doesn't matter how much it costs you. None of that matters. Just go out and shoot. That's the most important thing. So we're going to move on in the next section to how to actually use the cameras. And then we'll follow on from that to talk about exposure, which is probably the most important part of photography, is understanding the exposure triangle. It's not complicated. It's really, really easy to get your head around. And if you have a camera like this without a light meter, doesn't matter. You can still go out and take really good photos. So yeah, go and make a cup of tea, come back and we'll start talking about that.